Yes, it is good. How do we look? We look good. All right. So I just wanted to know, how did you start writing? Did you mention that you started sharing in 88, in one of those bios for New Rican women writers, I think it was.
Right. Well, I used to write fiction. I started late. I started early, actually. I wrote a lot when I was little, and I used to love to go to the library and get as many books as you can to, the limit, the 12 books or whatever it was back then, and go through them, especially in the summertime. And I was a good writer. I was a good speller, for sure. And so I did some writing, but not a whole lot. And then I did a little bit of writing in high school, but not a whole lot. And I did some in college. And when I graduated from college, I thought that I wanted to do something with writing. So there was a job with a magazine, and it was like editing or something like that. And I thought that's what I really wanted.
In college, what did you major in?
Education.
Okay.
So when I graduated, rather than going and taking that editing job, because I said, well, who knows, and with teaching, it's a sure thing. And so anyway, I did not go with the editing job. I went with the teaching. And so I would say I really started writing again in the 80s. So that was pretty.
Because the teaching started, so what did you teach, and where did, you know what, I want to fix this a little, because this is focused on me more than it is on you. All right, cool. Well, you know what,
now you're not
No, I'll be in a minute. All right. I've never missed on that.
So I taught a little bit of everything. I taught.
No, I don't like it still. There. That's better. No, now. Thank you. Okay. So what were you teaching?
I taught a little bit of everything, all grades, from K to high school, actually.
Where?
And, in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn.
Mostly in Brooklyn, but some in Manhattan. I taught at a high school that was bilingual special ed. I taught English as a second language and Spanish as a first language for elementary school kids. But they were for the smart, Spanish as a second language was for the smart kids. Only the first, classes used to be graded. I don't know about how they are anymore, but it used to go like 1 to 12, if there were that many classes. The 1-1 class and the 1-2 class were the smart classes.
Right.
So they were getting the Spanish as the second language. So I taught like from 1-1 and 1-2 up to 6-1 and 6-2 Spanish. And then ESL was for the new arrivals, of course. And Brooklyn was very rich in cultures.
Where in Williamsburg?
East Flatbush.
East Flatbush, okay.
And
so you taught everybody.
Yeah. I taught everybody. So we had Haitian kids and we had Latino kids and not Chinese. So yeah, that's.
And so how long did you teach?
Altogether, I was with the Board of Ed about 22 years.
Really? Wow.
But not teaching. I would say the last 10 years I was doing administrative work.
Okay.
But it was with bilingual ed programs and special ed programs mostly.
So did you retire and that's when you started writing?
I retired early because I had been writing before, but I wanted to do more of it. And I had already gotten residencies that were pretty nice residencies while I was still working. But I decided I wanted to retire early, and they had an early retirement that particular year, and so I took early retirement and put more into the writing. And then I switched from, I started with fiction actually, and I thought my fiction was just like too convoluted and too on, and it never got to where I wanted it to get. And so I took a poetry course at the Poetry Project to inform the fiction, to get it like more concise, and I just stayed with poetry.
Okay, who was that class with?
That first class, I think, it's hard to remember, I don't know if it was Todd Colby.
Okay. Oh really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it might have been with Todd Colby. I remember I was afraid going into the class because I said poetry. Poetry's such a weird thing, and it was, I didn't like poetry when I was in school because it was made something very apart from my life, and it wasn't really made relevant to me. So we studied the classics and we studied the well-known English poets and all of that. And I always felt like I hated it because nobody made it relevant to me. And I used to say, that's for other people, that's not for me. That poetry is not for me. And I guess it wasn't until I saw what poetry could be, and through people like Pedro, who made it real, and other poets that were around at the time. And that's what got me more interested. And then I saw poetry could be a lot of different things, and it could relate to you, and you could relate it to other people. That's the most important thing, I think, that your poetry is something that's relatable. And it's not always relatable. Sometimes it's way out there and...
But there's something about your stuff it's abstract, but it's relatable. There's, like, to me, that's why I'm interested in it. Like, it's not sort of laying it all out there for you. It's not on the surface, not necessarily confessional, but there's confession in there, you know, like, so it's very fragmented. And that's why I think I'm drawn to what you do, because that's, I think, what I aim for, too. I don't think I can be fully confessional.
Yeah.
And that's the thing for, I think, especially writers of color, New Yorican writers, like, they tend to be in that vein.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't that the vein for you necessarily?
The so-called New Yorican poets, I'm not considered by most people a New Yorican poet. And that's okay. But it seemed like a lot of them were talking about ñames y yuca y plátanos and it didn't get beyond that. You know, it seemed to me like it was always about the fruit and the fauna,
so
and I'm
funny.
so Puerto Rican, and I don't know, it just turned me
That's
off
hilarious.
a lot of it.
In like Texas, someone was always like, all the Mexicans write about pan dulce, which is they're like, you know, it's like it's just the food or something. The food is great.
Yeah.
Yes, I get it. Yes.
Right. So, and it was, a lot of it was beautiful, and it was really old-fashioned, like people who declaman, you know, who really are out there saying their poem, like they're stating it out there, like old-fashioned kind of poetry. And that didn't seem to be what I wanted to do also. And I think I'm experimenting more with the stories of my life, but then taking it out there someplace. And sometimes it's through repetition, and sometimes it's not directly connected, sometimes it's somewhat connected. And I think like poets, or the audience has to make the connection if they care to.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. So that's, to me, like, the real issue is, like, identity stuff, and, like, how do you deal with identity but not deal with identity? Like, sometimes it's too overwhelming, identity.
Yeah.
And,
I think so, too. I've been trying for a while to think of a book that's a poetry book, biography, something like that. And I get stuck because I think it's too, and then this happened, and then that happened, and I want to cover my mother, and I want to cover my father, and I want to cover my brother, who was in that one of those poems, who was handicapped, severely so. He was autistic, and he was a big center of the family, so that took up a lot of space in the family. So I've been thinking about writing like a memoir in poetry, but I don't want it to be just memoir. And I want a little bit of everything thrown in there. So I keep changing my mind about what it is I want. So, okay, I'm gonna go, so is Papi covered enough? Is Mommy covered enough? Is, you know, that kind of stuff. And then I go, enough, you know?
Yeah.
I wanna like turn it into something else. I don't want something so linear.
Right. I mean, and that's in some ways what your books are already doing, really. And I guess it's to figure out organizationally what that means.
Right.
Right. Right, because I think we do want to confess. We do want to say something, but we just don't want it to be plain, like, and out there and so exposed. Like, I often just feel like people really get naked, and I just am like, I'll show you like a little shoulder.
Yeah, but I'm not going to show you. I'm not going to show you how bad I really am, because you know I'm really pretty bad. I'm not going to show you all of that. I'll just show you that maybe I didn't want my brother to live, and then I go, oh my God, did I really say that? You know?
Yeah.
Did I really, you know?
Yeah.
So you take chances sometimes. You know, I took a workshop with a poet who was handicapped herself. And I talked about my brother and wishing when I was a little girl that he would be dead, because he was like, everybody would make fun. My mother would go out with him and he's like doing all this stuff. And I'm saying, I don't belong to that family. Or, you know, the whole thing about being light-skinned Puerto Rican, that you can pass. But what does that mean, that you can pass? Because then you're negating who you are. Or the teachers who used to say, are you really Puerto Rican? And you almost feel like saying, thank you very much. Yes, I am, you know. But what do you're giving yourself up. You are Puerto Rican. And it doesn't matter if you're light-skinned or not. You're Puerto Rican, and we're not white. We may look white, but we're not white, you know? So there's all that goes into thinking about telling your life story.
Yeah. And even in that, like, there's a negation of identity. Like, maybe like you flee from identity because you've been confronted with identity in these ways all the time, you know? Like, yeah. I mean, I remember just like my brother, I was born here, but all my family's from Honduras, and right. So I was not Honduran.
Exactly. So that's.
And yet and then I'm raised by you though, and y'all are hell of that.
Yeah.
So I must be that.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
it's that
where else do you learn these things except for?
Well, in Puerto Rico, I wasn't Puerto Rican enough. They used to call me Yankee or Gringa, you know, or she can't speak Spanish the way we do. And sometimes it would be with a smile or a laugh, but you knew that it wasn't a compliment, you know. Yeah. And then here, I wasn't really American unless I erased all the traces. And when I was in school, I went to school only speaking Spanish. And I had a teacher who this was a long time ago, so ESL wasn't around. So there was a nice white teacher, Miss Powell, who took me under her wings and basically taught me English.
So wait, so were you born here?
I was born here.
But at home it was all Spanish?
It was all Spanish, and it was all Puerto Rican, and I was Puerto Rican, and the food was Puerto Rican, and the music was Puerto Rican, and everything was Puerto Rican. And when I started school, I realized,
oh, wait a minute, I need to learn some English.
This is not such a good thing to be.
Yeah.
I thought I was fine. I'm happy in my family. I'm happy in my home. I come out, and I'm being told that you're not such a great thing. You know, or being in college and being told, and I went to mostly a white college. I went to St. John's University, and
St. John's?
St. John's, yeah. But when I was in Erasmus, which was all white also, because we moved, we made it to the big time, you know, to East Flatbush, which was then all white and had trees, and I thought we were in the country because we had trees on the block. And when
Williamsburg.
From Williamsburg, yeah. So, you know, it was like transitions where you go into a better place, but it's not better if you're told you don't belong, or you belong only because you happen to be light-skinned, or you've gotten rid of your accent, or you learned English better than the English-speaking kids, so that I'm going to learn better than them. I'm going to speak better than them because they're not going to put me down, you know? And then, but that takes out of you. That takes a lot out of you also.
Yeah, no, it messes with your head. It just messes with your sense of identity. I mean, you may gain this language, but you like lose the connections then to the family. Really.
I had this aunt who, Titi Sara, who lived in the South Bronx on Fox Street, and she had like 10 kids, and they used to send her kids that were my sister and my age for summer camp to our house in Williamsburg. And we used to go for summer camp for a week or two to Fox Street to spend with those cousins, you know, summer camp. So, but that's true. And Titi Sara used to come visit us with all these kids trailing behind her. And she used to be like quite a lady. So she used to dye her hair blonde and wear these really tight dresses. And I loved her because she was a storyteller. She was wonderful. She was funny. Like she'd say stories, and my mother would go, "Ay, Sara, por favor," you know, like don't say those blue jokes or whatever. And when she came to my house, she was the life of the party. I loved her. But when she was coming down the street to see us on East 37th Street with this tight garish dress with dangles and jingles and blonde or orange hair with a trail of kids behind her, I would go, "Ay, Dios mío." But then she'd come in the house and everything was okay again because I was in a safe space in my house. But seeing her out there like that was like, oh my God, she's embarrassing us. She's really Puerto Rican. You know, like we got a little bit beyond that, but she is really Puerto Rican. So your head is messed with, you know, until you get beyond that. And it's not that easy.
It takes a really long time.
It
does
takes
it.
a long-
I don't know if you always carry that,
Yeah.
how you felt about it.
Yeah.
Which is a certain amount of it's almost like a certain amount of shame, basically.
Yes, it's shame
and
and
all
then
the
guilt.
Mhm.
Then the guilt about it, you know.
And like all the identity stuff that a lot of poets do is really pride. And it's awesome, but I can't work up there. It's just not where I can work up to.
You mean like the Latino
Like
poets
to
who
be
are so-
really it's too much pride.
It's too much pride.
We're both.
It's too many yucas and too many plátanos and too many mangos and it's enough.
It's a lot.
We
I think
don't
it's
like
enough.
that stuff, but there's other things to talk about.
Yeah, and to me, honestly, the conflicts are the writing. Conflict is writing. Like all the uncomfortable things are writing. There can be really joyous things, the uncomfortable
Right.
things too. So.
Yeah, and the other thing I can't get into is kill the white man, I mean, after a while, that's.
Because then we'd have to chop ourselves in half.
Yeah, sometimes you feel that.
You want to do.
But that's not going to be my poetry.
Yeah.
Because that's too over the top, and it's not good poetry.
So this is the question, right? So yeah, these are all the questions. Like we would get in trouble a little bit for some of that stuff, like to say even some of this stuff. But like it's, I don't know. Like to me, the kill a white man stuff also means killing English, which we're all speaking in all the time. Like this language is what. Yeah. So it drives me crazy. I'm like, you're saying that in the white man's tongue, kill the white man. So just take your tongue out right now. Like I don't understand. Like it drives me a little bit. I don't know. The thing is, I don't know. It's hard to get. It's like we're all the white man in some way.
Exactly.
That's really
so you
what
can't
that
say
is.
kill the white man because you're killing part of yourself also, because we're all part of humanity.
And it's very hard to deny these things.
Yeah.
I'm just not a censorship person, and to me, that's censoring a part of your existence and censoring so many things. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think I read that in your stuff, and why I gravitate to that. I don't know. I want a more complex understanding of things, and I'm also in these school. Like I say, I was complaining to you earlier that in the school, for instance, it's been really hard to be in an English department because it is older white men who want me to teach certain things, I'm surprised it's still that antiquated. That's
I'm
all.
surprised too. I was surprised when you told me today, because I thought when open admissions happened 50 years ago that things would have changed a little bit, And it's not even open. I mean, you have to pay now too.
CUNY in some ways can be more antiquated than even some of the private schools and more progressive schools, truthfully. So it's just it's a weird tension to deal with all that. It's not like I don't, and of course I'm gonna have women of color or people of color in like my syllabus and in my classroom, and not even really trying, truthfully.
Yeah.
That's just what's happening. That's to me the people that I read who did read all the things I read,
Exactly.
or maybe read more, read more, because I didn't read all of the English literature in the world. So I did a lot, but I want to talk to people who've had this experience, and then it's filtered through them in a certain way that I, can relate to.
That the students can relate to also, because I'm sure you want your students to relate to your work, and you want them to be open enough to then be able to give back what they have inside them. And if they relate to the teacher, I think that's easier to happen.
Yeah, so how long, what time do we have right now? What time is it?
It's 5 to 3.
Oh man, all right. Do you guys have questions? Do you guys have any questions? Yes, Rebecca.
Sure. So, one of your poems, I don't remember exactly which one it was, but it was kind of like a metaphor of with cowboys about police. I think it was
Yes.
supposed to be about police.
Yeah,
school.
I was looking for that poem today and I couldn't find it.
So it just
Yeah.
made me think about, like, I guess you're writing about, like, the political environment. So I was wondering, like, if you're writing today about the political environment, has the writing, like, changed? Like, have you always been writing about politics like that? And
No, I don't, because I
It has
think
to be-
politics is very hard to do. And I think I try to do it in a roundabout way, I'm not gonna, like my mother used to say in that poem, we used to watch TV together, and the cowboys back then were the good guys, they were the white, and they dressed in white. And the bad guys always dressed in black. And so my mother was very clear and focused, black and white. And so we used to sit down, and when things got a little bit not as black and white, when they got more into the psyche of people and what was going on, she would still say to me, and she wasn't quite sure what was going on, so she'd go, ¿cuál es el malo? Y
Which
¿cuál
is
es
the-
el bueno? Who's the good guy and who's the bad guy? I want to know, because it's not clear in the more modern, when they started people having brains and could think and stuff like that in TV shows, So she wanted to know. So then I bring up, the fact that when Martin Luther King was killed, when he was doing all those demonstrations and everything, she was really scared before he was killed. She said, they're gonna kill that man. Lo van a matar. And look at all those kids that they put out there to demonstrate, to go segregate, integrate the schools. Those kids, and they did get hurt. A lot happened. But my mother used to say, basically she was saying, he'd better keep quiet or he's going to be killed. And those kids are being put out there. But I didn't want to say all of that. I just wanted to start with her wanting to know who was bad and who was good. And then she was basically saying, he's a good man, but he's going to get killed because you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't speak out in America.
Yeah. I think with my family, I think about that, how my mom still perceives it that way, of course, and like, I think what they don't realize is that these people know they're gonna be killed. Like,
Yeah.
they are putting themselves out there for, like, some people are martyrs, that they're doing this on purpose.
That's right.
That's part of the leadership idea. Like,
Right.
leadership means you're putting your neck out there. You're gonna,
Right. But my mother just saw.
That's too much. Right. Our family's survival. Like, how could you even think about?
Don't say anything,
Yeah.
Don't say anything. We gotta get through in this country, in this place, and,
Yeah, be quiet.
try to
right.
blend in, be quiet.
Mhm.
Be quiet, which is a
Which is
problem.
understandable. People don't want to die. I get it. People don't want to die.
So I don't know if that answered your question.
But sometimes,
Yeah, but I don't,
Some
I
people-
want to be political, but I don't want to be hitting you over the head with the politics,
yeah.
I don't want to say kill the white man,
Because I also don't want to die.
Huh?
It's so subtle when you do it. Like,
Yeah.
So suddenly you want to die.
That guy's no damn good, think about it, but don't do it, Think about it.
Other questions? Any other questions? I also don't take it personal, white men. That's like I'm interested in the white man in all of us. Is what I'm actually interested in. The truth is, like, plenty of people of color. Like, I mean, you're in a country that's defined by white male aesthetics. I think you need to think about it as like. In the 60s, you're talking about a system. You can't talk about individuals, but it's a system, and it's a way of thinking too. So, white supremacy is a way of thinking, and that we're all like susceptible to, that we're all subject to, and what does that mean in your life? Like, so it's not really particular to white men. But you gotta think about it in your life. Like, I feel like I wasn't surrounded by white people necessarily. We all grew up in New York. New York is all the things, right? And so and not that there isn't racism and all the things in New York, but it's a definite different experience. When I went off to college, that was white people. That was really a white culture. Like, I was in an Ivy League school, and it was a white culture, and that's when I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is total culture shock. And even the people of color, the few who were there, were from really elite worlds. They were all very wealthy. They were very connected, and I was mostly friends with people of color, and that was such an experience, like that. They were not from what I was from. They were not dirt poor. They were not
Right.
like working class or understood, like, some of them had people, there were buildings named after people in that school, you know, like in their last name. So I didn't understand any of that. That was culture shock for me. That was real. So there's just levels of connection and wealth that I can't even begin to explain to you. And I couldn't explain to myself. So, you know, that's where, to me, my understanding of real whiteness, so-called whiteness, was. And I was like, oh, they don't really, I'm not even speaking English to them. Like, anything that comes out of my mouth, they're looking at me like, what are you saying? Like, you have this accent, there's something on your language that we don't understand.
Right.
Really, I worked at Vanity Fair, like this, that was probably one of the whitest places I ever worked in. And that, I had a good friend, this one blonde like lady who was my friend from the Village Voice, we worked together, and she would literally, like, I would talk to some of the white guys there, and they would look at her to repeat what I had said.
Wow.
Because they didn't get my accent or I was like, it was really a lot. It would happen. This was 2002. Like, that would happen.
And they were supposed to be smart.
So, I mean, this is in New York, in like 42nd Street. There was the Condé Nast building there, and it was just like very bizarre. Like, they weren't used to a Latin person who wasn't picking up the wastebaskets. So I was in the department. I was like, you know, doing research, and I was an editor, like, in the department. So it was very bizarre. I mean, and so that's maybe as white as it got. But really, in my personal life, I think it was like yours. Like, we had family who internalized all these things.
Right.
You know, like the racism, they maybe were benefited from their own whiteness, and you know, like, weren't gonna question it. You know, so anyway, so yeah. Any other questions? Yes, Melissa.
Okay, so you talk a lot about, you know, being Puerto Rican and then trying to change the conversation on Puerto Rican literature. Like, instead of banging on pride, you want to expose maybe the more bad things. But you also talk about not wanting to expose yourself completely. And I also, like, I'm Albanian, and all the literature that we have about our culture is like pride, 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 pride. And I want to change that, but I also find myself like, I don't want to say too much, and how do I navigate this? But how do I also change the conversation on our culture and existing in America? And then that's one question. And also, do you find that other Puerto Rican artists around you, like, they have a problem with you wanting to change the conversation? Because I know, like, I'll show my work to my Albanian friends or my Albanian peers, and they're like, you're kind of making us look bad. Why do you want to publish this? Why do you want to make this point of conversation? I'm like, this is important, but I don't know how to navigate that, so to speak.
I think you just have to write it out for yourself first. What are all your feelings? What are your feelings about being Albanian? What are your feelings about not being? There must be things you don't like about being Albanian, such as these people who look at you differently because you want to be honest about yourself. Not all Albanians are the same. Not all Puerto Ricans are the same. You have your own truth. And I think maybe you need to write it out for yourself, to see it for yourself. You know, see for yourself, what are your beliefs about being Albanian? And what are things that bother you? What are things that you may be ashamed of? I think all those things have to be explored, but you have to put it out there for yourself first, I think. And then the second part was,
How do you navigate, like, trying to change the conversation on pride and also, like, keep yourself not completely exposed? Because that's also something that's kind of weird for me.
well, pride, again, you have to change the conversation for yourself, because I'm sure there are things you feel pride about. I feel proud about being Puerto Rican, and I do. And I identify myself as a Puerto Rican poet born in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. That's the Puerto Rican part of Williamsburg where I was born, and that's part of me. And I think you have to put it out there for yourself and explore for yourself and put all the ugly stuff out there for yourself. And then start writing off of it and see what you feel comfortable with.
I mean, maybe don't give it to those people right away.
Yeah, don't give it, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Hold on to it for a while and then see what you feel, because you may spout out a lot of stuff that you'll be thinking, I don't really mean this. Or maybe you do mean it in some ways, and then you just have to see what are you comfortable with.
Yeah, it depends on the form. I mean, I think you can make it, You can make it public in other ways. Maybe you want to be in a group that isn't those people, like another
Right,
writing
that's
group,
right. That's right.
or I don't know. There's even like I think I mentioned there's trends of people writing anonymously now, so that might be your pen name or something. Like that's this has happened many times where people write in pen names, and yeah, it's a way to go.
But I think what you said also, being with a lot of other people.
Yeah.
So if you feel that these people, and if they're Albanian poets or people who love Albanian poetry, that's fine, but maybe you need to be with that group. There could be people of that group, but mix it up.
Yeah.
Because you're only gonna get negative outcomes from what they say to you, because they already feel that if you say anything negative, you're negative.
I think in some ways we work around I think that's where poetry is helpful. Like, I know that I think you like maybe story more, fiction more, I don't know. But like, even though it can all be done in all the genres, but like to me, poetry was some way to make a shape or hide a thing and say a thing at the same time. I don't know, like I always say it's like a revealing and a concealing.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't say it in like the explicit things enough, but I feel like the shape of things hints at like something broken, something not right. Like that's what fragmentation to me is, or like breaking up, being abstract, that you can like sort of capture a condition or an existence and that feeling of it, like not feeling whole. Like, so yeah, I mean, that's how that works for me. Like the shape, the form helps you, find a way to say the thing you want to say.
Yeah, and the irony is for me as a poet, I see myself as a Puerto Rican poet. And I'll tell you why, because I think as a child and growing up, Puerto Rican was made to be such a negative thing for me that I claim it. That I'm Puerto Rican, yes, I'm Puerto Rican, and I'm prideful, but I don't want my poetry to be all about that. Because it's also about telling the truth about what you saw, what you see growing up, what you see in your family. It's telling the truth, really. And the irony is that I identify myself as a Puerto Rican poet, but the Puerto Rican poetry scene, the New Yorican poetry scene, I think more now they're claiming me in a way, but they did not claim me. They did not claim me. I wasn't considered a New Yorican poet.
Why do you think more now?
I think because they've seen me more. They've just been exposed to me more. And maybe they have some kind of respect for the work. I don't know. I hope so,
Maybe it's also like there's just been some dire from Puerto Rico in the last few years and stuff. I think everyone's just like really claiming it because it feels like some kind of ends for it.
Right.
Right. Like Poetry Puerto Rico, those readings were amazing. Like there were these groups of readings called Poetry Puerto Rico that were just like whole anthologies themselves.
After the
and it was a way to kind of preserve something that feels like it could be, I mean, I don't want to say it, but could be dying. Like, Puerto Rico's dying.
Yeah, Puerto
after
Rico's
that.
dying,
So,
it's true.
well, death certainly makes you, like, think about pride a little more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm very, I love Puerto Rico. I have a lot of pride about Puerto Rico, but that's not going to be in my every poem. It's in a lot of it, but I'm not going to be waving the flag in every poem.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, right.
Because that would get boring.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, it certainly can. Okay, you wanted to give out some books, yes?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if we have enough.
I think that I'm going to give.
We're gonna just put you in a pit, and you're gonna fight for them.
Or you can share. I was going to give away 9 books. I'm going to give away 10 because I'll give away the one that I read from as well.
But you have to sign them too. Okay. She has to sign
I'll
them.
sign. But
Okay, so who really wants it? Well, that's about 9.
I couldn't bring this one.
We'll get
because
you
it's
some
out of
more.
print.
All right. Just whoever's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 9. Okay, wait. Come on up. Just come on up, and then duke it out. Oh, here, I'll give you a pen. Hold on.
But they They need to be shared with your classmates if they
Yeah.
want to.
Again, you snooze, you lose.
Exactly.
That's it. I sat in the front. I don't know
Wanna
about
go?
you.
I'm a sucker for free shit.
Thank you, guys. Right.
Alex, ALEX. I used to do these at Barnes and Noble. I know it's just like
Yeah.
Some excitement. Taking a picture.
One more, Professor.
Thank you so much.
Oh, we're gonna do a bit of this, but you'll
Gonna
see.
do a selfie?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that.
Natalie?
I'm very into that. You know,
Selfies.
it's a thing I'm into.
I'm signing them in Spanish.
What a millennial.
You won. Okay, good. 1, 2, 3. You can make it. Yeah, that's good.
It's a cool little like tripod thing.
Yeah, I stole it from my niece.
Where's my truck?
Yeah, you know what? She's not. That's the real problem. That's why.
Yeah.
It's mine. I'm taking it. That's on the video.
Have you